30 days on the sugar diet. Here's my results, my reactions, and my thoughts. Stick around. Before I get into those results, let's first recap the last few days of the month, days 27 through 30. Day 27 was a Sunday. It was Father's Day, so I planned to eat that day. I went out and I ate some salad. I had a few pieces of pizza and I had some wings. I did put on a couple of pounds the morning after. The next day, day 28, planned to be a complete sugar fasting or sugar diet day since it was a workout day. So I planned to take in some starches post-workout meal, which I did. I did the cereal and rice. Ate some rice cakes throughout the day and some pickles. Did not take any protein in during that day. Day 29 was a planned sugar fasting day. I take that back. It was a planned sugar diet day because I did have a meeting to go to later on that evening. I knew I was going to eat just to be social, and it was kind of one of my monthly meetings. So I sugar fasted in the morning, knowing that I was going to eat later on that evening. And then I ended up eating some chicken and rice. Did what I could with the menu. I did have some bread on that as well. So ended up putting on about a pound or so the next morning. So the next morning was day 30, which was yesterday. Planned to be a complete sugar fasting day, even though it was a planned workout day. So I did work out, just sugar fasted. And then my recovery after that was just complete sugar fasting. No protein, no starch for the rest of the day. And I ended up, this morning, ended up dropping maybe half a pound or so from the previous day. So what were my results from the overall 30 days? Overall 30-day results, total 4.8 pounds, if we want to be exact, so right around 5 pounds. The grand scheme of things, probably not great. The most I was, and probably not great for the fact that I tinkered a lot. If you were watching my videos as I was going through those daily updates, I was tinkering a lot with it. I wasn't being as strict or consistent as I probably should have been or could have been. But again, it was new. I was trying to figure out what this was all about. And if you remember even my original video, I was pretty skeptical about sugar diet or sugar fasting in itself. So I was playing around and I was experimenting, and I think that's okay. I think if I was really, I really wanted to use it for the rapid weight loss that everyone's doing, I probably would have been more committed to doing, actual fasting or sugar fasting the whole time. And I think a lot of new information was coming out as it was going through. I mean, this first month that I did it, it had just blasted on the scene, not too long before that. So there was a lot of new information, changing information, even for some of the influencers that were doing this. Some of the tunes were changing a little bit, but hey, we're all kind of learning and we're all kind of going through this thing. So I was doing the same thing. So overall, about 5 pounds down. Or at the most, I was down about 7.5. And that was not too long ago. That was about a week ago that I hit that mark. The most weight loss came after a day that I was doing sugar fasting, sugar diet, and I wasn't taking in any protein. That came on the heels of not taking in any protein for like 5 days. So that to me is telling. That's a data point that I want to track, because protein, through all the things that have been talked about, that was the thing that really would stall or kind of stop the progress from sugar fasting. Protein is, more protein is what kind of blocks this FGF21, which is the kind of this thing that kicks sugar fasting and sugar dieting into overdrive, and what we gain by limiting the protein or minimizing the protein and fat, and then upping the carbs. So, overall, I knew it wasn't going to be I wasn't using it for a rapid weight loss, and that's what it's, billed to be. Weight loss, yes, but for me, more importantly too, was body composition. So having said that, looking at my body comp measurements and things like that, and this is as of about 20 days of this, because when I decided to actually do some measurements, I was already about 10 days into the sugar diet. So since that point, and since I have taken new measurements, my waist, I've lost 1/4 of an inch. My chest, I've lost 1/2 an inch. And again, most of, a lot of it for men is chest and ab and waist kind of areas where we carry the fat. So in the abdomen, I lost 0.6 of an inch, so just over 1/2 an inch. So that's within the last 20 days. So that for me, that is the biggest success that I'm looking at right now. Weight wise, you can fluctuate. It's easy to fluctuate pounds, a few pounds in a day, depending on water intake and again, protein and whatever you're eating. It's easy to fluctuate that even from a morning to an evening. And so one of the things, and let me just stop right there, but one of the things when you're weighing, making sure you're consistent as far as kind of that time of day or times of day whenever you're doing it. If you want to take results, weight results, make sure you're doing it in the same spot, you're doing the same kind of routine, you're doing the same rough time of the day so that you can get the most consistent and accurate results. So anyway, the body comp to me is probably the biggest success so far. So for me, it works, right? This thing has been working. The other thing that I would say is my craving for coffee has diminished. Again, I love coffee. I've been a coffee drinker for 30 years, 35 years. I've been drinking coffee for a long time. But I can go now without having a cup of coffee until probably the afternoon, and I'm still not going to get that caffeine kind of withdrawal headache. Most of you coffee drinkers will kind of test and kind of back me up on that. If you don't get a cup of coffee after the first maybe hour or two of the day, or that normal time that you're ingesting that caffeine, you usually start getting that headache. And for whatever reason, and I'm still not sure exactly what it is, I can go until the afternoon. Sometimes I've gone an entire day without having a cup of coffee and not have that caffeine headache. And like I said a second ago, the craving for actually coffee. Now, I mean, again, I love coffee, so I brew a pot every morning. This is my first cup of the day, and it's a few hours into the day already. But that craving or that need to go and get that cup of coffee has not been there. But when I do have a cup of coffee, I enjoy it. So, my thoughts. I think it definitely works. It definitely works. It's definitely a good tool. Now, can you get the same results with just regular fasting? Yeah, probably so. I mean, yes, so. I've done fasting. I've done water fasting. Can you get those same results? Yeah. But is it more enjoyable than water fasting? And for me, yes. What I don't know, well, what still is the kind of gray area for me is if you're coming off a sugar fast and then you go and eat your starches and proteins, what kind of the impact of transferring? How am I saying that? The sugar and the protein and the fat are still kind of in your system together. Whereas if you're just doing a water fast, there's none of that. There's none of those carbohydrates that are either still in the system or you're not putting those carbohydrates back in your system after you've done protein and starch. And fat. So there's nothing to kind of conflict. I think that's the part that really this thing is trying to do. Same with fasting, right? You're eliminating some of those macros and you're only taking in certain macros by themselves. Again, for sugar fasting and sugar diet, you're taking in all the carbohydrates and you're not taking in protein and fat. If you're water fasting, you're not taking in anything. And then when you do, perhaps you're taking in all of those 3 macros. So I don't know. For me, there's still some tinkering and some experimentation that I'm thinking I wanted to do. I think it can overall, let me back up real quick. One of my concerns was metabolic health and whether or not this thing and this sugar diet could really help, or could it hurt? Can it hurt long term? If you don't eat the right sugars, I definitely think that it can hurt long term. If you stick to whole fruits, or fruits, wet fruit, dry fruit, canned fruit, and stay away from, say, the candy part of it or the table sugar part of it, and just use like honey as your sweeteners, I think it could be fine for a long-term metabolic health. I think if you add in the table sugars a lot, and you do the candy, and you do the soda, and all those kind of things that we know have other elements in there that are just not good for the body. At least that's what I think. I think then if you're doing those kind of things long term, it won't be good for you metabolically. Now, this, by virtue of losing weight and maybe recomping your body, is good and can assist and be good for your metabolic health overall. Is this alone good for the metabolic health? I don't know. It's the overall impact of weight loss that is probably helping it out. So what's my plan going forward? I still don't know. I'm still doing it as kind of just an instinctive type of thing. I will say that I do still crave protein because I am a protein eater. So I am still thinking about that protein and starch meal. I think that, let's say for the rest of this month, at the end of this month will be the 6-month mark for my current kind of fitness journey. I started at the beginning of the year. And so at the end of June will be that 6-month mark. So I'm gonna see this through probably to at least the end that time. I'm trying to get down to about 225. My overall goal is to get down to 220, but I think I can hit 225, which is about another 6 pounds, by the end of the month. And I think that will come if I am pretty strict, I should say, on sugar fasting and sugar diet. And I think I'm going to try to continue to do the low protein. And there's about 11 days or so to the end of the month. So somewhere maybe in the middle, I may do another 5-day no protein. I will take in the starches since, I have the stats as far as my tracking of, I can still take in the starch. As long as I keep the protein low, I will continue to trend down. So I may try that for the next 5 days and do that no protein again. And maybe at that point, if I really feel like I need it, maybe I'll throw all that protein back in or get some protein. But I want to go through the end of the month and see where I am at the end of the month. Again, my goal is 225, which is about another 6 pounds away. And I think that's achievable. I think that's realistic. So that's what I'm going to do at least to the end of the month. Beyond that, though, I'm still not quite sure. I think that I might want to play around with reversing that and doing just protein, no starch, and see what that does. I don't know. So anyway, that is kind of the results after 30 days. I was skeptical. Now I'm a believer in this tool. Long-term benefits. I think it will do it if it will work, or it'll be fine if you do it the right way and not get carried away with all the processed kind of the sugars and candies and things like that. But I think it could help. I think if people want to try it, that's the other thing. I think if people are still skeptical and there are naysayers about that, I say just try it. Try it out. 30 days. Do it for 30 days. Do it for a week. Do sugar fasting for a week and see what that does to you, and see what you, I think you would see. I think you would be pleasantly surprised at the results of just doing sugar fasting for 5 to 7 days. So I think that's it. That's it for the 30-day update. Do all the YouTubey things, like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell, do all that stuff. But leave me some comments. If you've been on this journey, or if you're thinking about starting it, or if you did it and got off it, would you let me know what your thoughts are, what your results are? I've had some comments, which have been some pretty good comments about, and input about suggestions. I've had some negative ones about things, but you know what? Trolls will be trolls. So I'm not going to worry about that too much. But if you're serious about it, and if you're serious about your health, and serious about making a change, let me hit on that change thing for a second. You know, the body is an incredible machine. If you think about all the pieces and parts that the human body has going and all the things that it needs to do to stay into homeostasis, it is actually incredible. And it's very adaptable. And it adapts quickly and it adapts well to changes and things that are happening. So if we go through certain diets or certain protocols or certain routines and things like that, the body quickly or eventually adapts to those things. And sometimes you need to shock it. You need to give it a jolt and wake it up and make it do something out of the ordinary. It gets into its comfort zone. It says, oh, I'm good now. I'm balanced out. I'm going to stay right where I'm at. But doing this sugar diet or sugar fasting, or even doing a dry fast or water fasting, it shocks the body into doing something different, and it forces change. So if you've been doing all these other diets and you've maybe stalled, this would be a good alternative to shock your body to making a change. Make a change, make it get readjusted to that, and then go right back to doing whatever you were doing. So you can use it in that way. And, I like to go back to, I'm an old Joe Weider fan. I started doing lifting and things like that back in the day when, back in the 80s and 90s when Weider was blowing up on the scene and bodybuilding and all that kind of stuff. So I attribute it to, or I relate it to, the muscle confusion principle, where you're trying to confuse your muscles into growing. You're trying to confuse your body into adapting. So, stalled on weight loss, stalled on your progress, change something. Do something different. Make your body react so it has to adapt and it has to change. And then, when it thinks it's got it all figured out, flip it around again. Why not? Anyway, drop me comments. Let me know what you think. I could be off my rocker, but hey, life wouldn't be fun if we weren't tinkering around and having fun like that. So that's all I got for you today. And until next one, I'll see you.